Hey everybody, it's Gerard at the Refinery, and I just wanted to share a really cool project that we had come through here. So for anyone who's not super dialed into the world of Porsche vehicles and so on, this car requires a little bit of explanation because it's a very technical car. As you can see, it's not a typical road car that you would, go to the dealership, see it in the showroom and buy. This is built by Porsche Motorsports. It is a race car directly from the factory. So this particular car, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what the car is and then what we're doing with it here at the Refinery. But this car is a Porsche GT4 Clubsport MR, and the MR stands for Manti Racing. And I'll share a little bit more about that as well. So this is based off of the Porsche Cayman platform. And as a buyer, if you're interested in doing track events and sort of driving events on weekends and so on, the version of the Porsche Cayman that's sort of most appropriate for that, for the average consumer, is called the GT4. So the GT4 is spec'd a little bit differently than any of the other models of the Cayman line. It'll have slightly different interior components, a little bit of weight savings, transmission configuration and so on is a little bit unique to it. But they release a limited number of those GT4 cars. Generally that's an excellent platform to be able to kind of drive it around on the streets, do your thing, but also be able to go to the track on the weekends and kind of experience what the car was designed to be able to do. Now, if you're more interested in actual racing or just being more competitive at driving events, then Porsche Motorsports creates a version of the GT4 called the Clubsport. So the Clubsport, again, kind of specs it out much more for racing duty, where the interior doesn't have most of the interior for weight savings. Some of the glass has been replaced for lighter weight materials that just allows you to save a bit there. And then of course, some of the suspension design is spec'd appropriately for different racing classes and so on, so that you comply with the rules around how your car is configured, so that you have you're on a similar plane to the rest of the folks that are competing in your class, and that you're able to enter and comply with that class. So that's a pretty hardcore race car as it is the Clubsport. And then this is up yet another notch. So this is the MR version, which is Manti Racing. Manti Racing is a German race company, and they've partnered with Porsche to, again, just add a bit more sort of hardcore racing components into the platform for, again, people who are either chasing the utmost performance, or again going into competitive racing, and they're looking for additional advantages through weight savings and so on. So this car is actually fairly different, mostly on the outside, than a normal GT4 Clubsport. So the Manti Racing edition, which this one is, has a whole bunch of different exterior panels. So you can see all the black panels on the front end, so the front bumper, the hood, the front fenders, the rear bumper, the rear hatch. Those are all sort of made by Manti Racing, and they're super lightweight carbon fiber panels. When it arrived, it's actually, those panels are actually quite raw. Like they really, you can tell that they're made for racing purposes. They don't go overboard on the finishing to make it super glossy and clear coated and everything. They're actually quite raw carbon fiber panels. So that adds a ton of weight reduction right there. But there's some also other neat cues and so on. Like you can see the headlights are not sort of standard issue Porsche headlights, and those are mostly around cost savings, where, you know, if you are in competition and you're sort of, you know, banging into other cars, or, you know, maybe you have an off of the track, and you do some light damage to the car. You know, the Porsche headlights are just super expensive units, and they're all kind of one piece that if you damage it, the whole thing has to be replaced, and it's many thousands of dollars. So what, you know, this, again, race car version has sort of a removable, replaceable lens on top of a much simpler headlight design within it. Some other kind of telltale cues, aside from the obvious visual ones of the amount of black raw carbon fiber that's on the car, is there are sort of the fueling is, you know, what you would see on a lot of you know, competitive race cars, where, you know, there's kind of a dual nozzle set up in the center of the hood into the fuel cell. So that's different than a normal GT4 Clubsport. And the wheels are a different addition as well. You know, these are BBS wheels with GT4 MR on them. So, you know, Manti Racing has kind of spec'd out this particular wheel for this car. But I mean, there's a bunch of other little pieces here and there, like some of the mesh and netting and so on, which is, again, about the practicality of, you know, protecting certain components from debris on the track, of getting into sensitive areas and so on, and that's often a spec of a racing series as well. But, you know, some really neat things around the car, like almost all the glass aside from this one panel here is all super lightweight glass. So, you know, these do not roll up and down. You know, if you're removing the glass, there's, you know, 7 screws that need to come out, and then the whole panel comes out. Even the rear hatch, you know, it's all carbon fiber surround with a lightweight glass in it. And, you know, by myself, I can lift out this whole panel and kind of carry it around. It weighs a couple of pounds. It's really, you know, a pretty striking detail or exercise in weight savings there. So, you know, the car has really cool, you know, multi-dimensional adjustable suspension, so that, you know, you can do up to 3-way adjustability and so on. And a lot of that is about tailoring it for the driver, and being able to kind of tune the car for how the driver drives. And again, there's also some limitation in there around, if you do choose to enter into one of the standard racing series, you have to comply with a certain method of adjustability or limitations of adjustability for the car, so that everyone is generally competing with a similar spec vehicle. So why it came to us was, you know, this is a new car for the owner. You know, he's super excited, obviously, you know, someone who loves taking the vehicles out on the track and so on. So this is not owned by a race team, it's owned by a private individual, and he's got the sensibilities of a private individual, where he's like, you know, this is not a sort of throwaway type of vehicle for him. He intends to try and, you know, keep it in good condition. It's not his intention to kind of bang it up, you know, ruthlessly competing with other racers and so on, although it might see some actual racing duty. But so what we were asked to do for him was threefold. One is on all the painted panels, if we can polish out the paint, like when it comes from the factory, you can tell it's hand assembled. Like there's a lot of dust, there's a lot of sort of scratching and marring and stuff like that, relative to, you know, a car that you would pick up from the dealership and from the showroom. So it does come, and you can tell it's been handled. So what we did was we polished out, you know, all the white areas of the car, so that, you know, it's a race car with really show car quality paint on it now. And so that was the first thing. The second thing was he had all the sort of graphics and livery here custom designed for him. So he worked with a design house to kind of lay that out and design something that he thought, you know, was really cool. He liked the look of, you know, and wanted that on his car. So so he asked us to sort of bring that to life off of the renderings. So you've got sort of computer renderings of it. How do we get it onto the car? about protection. So once all the paint has been corrected, the graphics are on, we did full car paint protection film. So we use XPEL paint protection film to do a couple of things. One is obviously, the car is on the track, so it gets a lot of debris and a lot of stones kicked up and sand blasting and so on. So the paint protection film is the best way of being able to stop that from actually penetrating into the panels and gouging into the carbon fiber and leaving, chipped marks. Carbon fiber is quite brittle as it is. So even some of that stuff can do damage to the integrity of the panels. And, as you can imagine, these are full carbon fiber panels, which, you don't want to have to replace if, unless it's a very serious or a more serious type of, bump or bang that you've ended up having with the car. So paint protection film on the entire car. So that'll keep all the race rubber from, really grinding itself into the carbon fiber or into the painted panels. And then when we're done with the the paint protection film, then we do ceramic coating over that to give it a really repellent layer. And that's really helpful for not only the amount of dirt and grime and stuff that gets kicked up on the cars when they're on the track, but a lot of the race rubber, off of the marbles that are on the ground, or the tires, flinging, the cars in front of you are flinging hot rubber off of their tires onto the front end of the car, and they leave these big black stripes all over often the sides or near the vent openings, or obviously the hood and front bumper and so on. And ceramic coating is a really repellent sort of finish layer that allows you to kind of rub that stuff off without having to get into really harsh chemicals or really kind of rubbing and grinding and physically removing that type of markings and damage from from the top. You don't want to have to do that physically if you can do it chemically, or make it super easy to do it physically and be able to just simply wipe it off rather than really having to kind of grind it off using either a combination of chemicals and or towels and brushes and that kind of stuff. So that's sort of our involvement in this, and we're thrilled to have the car because number one, I'm pretty sure I'll have the opportunity to see it on the track and be on the track with it this year. So I'm super excited to kind of see it in action and moving and so on. What we're super proud of here is having had the opportunity to work on such a sort of a rare version of a car. Like, you will never see this on the street. It's not even street legal. You'll never see it on the street. You'll never see it in a showroom of the Porsche dealership or any other dealership. These are pretty exclusive race trim vehicles that that are fun projects to come through. But it was really rewarding for us to have the car in the first place, then have the renderings provided to us, and then being able to kind of assemble everything that it took in order to turn it from pictures and photographs into a finished product that looks exactly like what the owner asked for and wanted here. So we're really proud of how it turned out, and in fact it surprised us in a lot of ways too, because like I mentioned, the raw carbon fiber front end and back end and so on. When the paint protection film goes on it, it actually totally changed the appearance of that carbon fiber. It looks like it's clear coated now, like it's got depth of shine. You can still see the weave, clear as day, but it's glossy now, and it looks more like an exotic supercar than a race car. So it's kind of a neat benefit of adding that protection layer. Also added this new visual component to the car, which makes the car even more sort of striking and interesting to look at when you see it. The interior of it is it's pretty radical as it is. It's full bars and cage. It's got the safety netting in it. It's got a fire suppression system. The steering wheel is off of an RSR race car. Digital dash with telemetry. There's a couple of GPS systems on the car to be able to capture data while the car is being driven and being able to sort of analyze your lapping and see how you're doing. So that's a whole other dimension of the actual use of this car that's really cool and really configurable and really sort of quantitative. So that's where the sort of engineer in me, or the nerd in me kind of gets excited about some of the other technologies that we see in the car, because it's not just about the driving feel and so on. It's about how do you quantify how the car is performing, so that you can either make adjustments to the vehicle or make adjustments to your driving style to try and improve your lap times, to try and fix areas of your lap or sections of your lap that you're struggling in, and maybe not so much in other areas and so on. So all of that data capture and telemetry information is super valuable for being able to kind of take your performance with the machine to the next level, and you need numbers to be able to do that. You can't only do it by intuition and instinct. And this car is all about that. There is cameras and data capture and sensors and systems that can either be used both for audit during the racing series, but also for your own analysis and tuning purposes.